There are days you still wake up, still go to work, still smile out of courtesy, but inside there's a hollow space. You're not sad enough to call it despair, not joyful enough to believe it's all worth it. You're simply existing, as if you're drifting, untethered, with no destination. No one sees you falling, but you know it's been a long time since anything has truly touched you. We often think it takes a dramatic push, a major event, or a long journey to wake us up. But sometimes, one sentence, spoken at the right time, is enough to remind you why you're still here. A sentence that doesn't preach, doesn't sugarcoat, just gently reminds you you're still alive, still capable of choosing, still capable of loving, even if you haven't said it out loud. No. In this video, Stoic App will walk you through 10 reminders, written to calm a weary mind and to remind you of this: you don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to return to what is real right now. If one sentence in this video speaks to you, hold on to it. And if you want to keep walking the path of living truthfully, deeply, and intentionally, let Stoic App walk with you. No noise, no rush, just the right words, at the right moment. 1. I'm grateful I'm still here, still alive. Some mornings, you wake up in silence, not excited, not sad, just a quiet emptiness inside, as if life is still happening, but you're standing on the outside, watching it unfold, hazy, distant. And then you hurry into the day, forgetting the simplest, most important thing: you're still here. I once received a message late at night: call you back tomorrow. It was from a close friend full of energy and laughter. But the next morning came a different call. Not from him. It was his family telling me he had passed away in an accident, sudden like a gust of wind extinguished in the night. At that moment, I didn't know how to react. I simply stepped out onto the balcony, let the sunlight touch my skin, let the early wind run through my hair, and for the first time, I truly felt alive. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think, I am fortunate to be alive, to breathe, to love." A simple sentence, yet powerful enough to shake the mind, because you realize someone once prayed for one more day to make things right, to love more, to simply be present a little longer, but they didn't get that chance. And you do. Stoic philosophy doesn't demand that you always be strong or optimistic. It simply invites you to pausato, see that your presence in this world, in this very moment, is not something to take for granted. You don't need a grand reason to be grateful. Just the fact that you can still breathe, that you can raise your hand to your chest and feel your heart still beating steadily, persistently, as if it's reminding you, hey, you still have time. Since that day, I've learned to start every morning differently, not with a to-do list, not with the pressure to be better, faster, or more, but with one brief moment, just a few seconds to place my hand over my chest, close my eyes and whisper, "Thank you for letting me still be here." Because sometimes that's all you need to begin again, with full presence, with deep gratitude, and with the awareness that, as long as I'm alive, I still have a chance to live it right. 2. I've been through worse, and I'll get through today too. I once woke up one morning to a message. "Dad's in the emergency room. The doctors say we should be prepared." 3 days later, I lost him. In a single moment, every goal, plan, and ideal vanished. I no longer knew what I was living for. For weeks afterward, I simply drifted through the days, no appetite, no desire to see anyone. Just getting out of bed felt like a battle. Then, sometime later, I hit another low, this time in my career. A startup I had poured everything into collapsed. I was in debt, had lost the trust of my friends, and I hated myself. At that point, I truly believed I was a complete failure. It felt like the entire world was turning its back on me. The harshest turns of my life hit all at once, piling up like crashing waves, trying to drown me in a cold, endless sea. My mind didn't scream, it didn't panic, it just went silent, cold as stone. And that was the scariest part. But I'm still here, not because I'm stronger than others, but because I didn't stop. I remember David Goggins, the man who grew up in an abusive household, a black boy mocked and belittled for not being smart enough or worthy. He once weighed nearly 300 pounds, worked as a pest exterminator, had a heart defect, and nearly died on the operating table. But instead of giving up, Goggins started running with bleeding knees, with fractured legs, with burning organs, just to prove to himself that he wasn't as weak as they said. And he once said something I'll never forget. "You've already been through hell. Why stop now? You've already walked through hell. Why stop halfway?" I don't run ultra marathons, but I've woken up early, showed up for work on time, paid off my debt, and dared to call my mother after nearly a year of silence out of shame. There were times I felt dead inside, but every small act, every shaky step, reminded me that I was still alive. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Remember, you have survived everything you've gone through up to this point." That's the Stoic way. Use your past as proof. Don't run from pain, look it in the eye and realize, because of it, you've been forged into who you are. Stoicism doesn't sugarcoat reality. It simply reminds you, the obstacle is not in the way, the obstacle is the way. So when the storm comes, what you need isn't comfort. You need a map, a memory of the storms you've already survived. Sit down and write down 3 times you thought you wouldn't make it, but you did. Not to glorify yourself, but to remind you, you're no longer the fragile person you used to be. You don't need motivation, you just need to remember how strong you already were. I've done it before, and today I'll do it again. And if you're in the middle of a storm right now, pause and look back. What you've overcome is the proof you've been searching for. Write it down or share it in the comments, and time you thought you'd fallen, but got back up. Not just to remind yourself, but to light the fire in someone else who needs to hear this. We are not weak, we've just forgotten how strong we once were. 3. I don't need to be perfect. I just need to move forward. We're living in a strange time where everything seems to need to be perfect before it's considered worthy of beginning. A flawless plan, a perfect body, a polished resume, or a fully ready mindset. Only then are we allowed to take action. But that very idea of perfection first is silently killing the desire to live truthfully, act boldly, and truly pursue what we long for most. I remember a friend who used to dream of opening a small coffee shop, a place with books, music, and space for lonely people to sit and find a little peace. He sketched out his plans in a thick notebook, read hundreds of articles on operations, prepared every detail. But whenever I asked when it would open, he'd say, "Not enough capital, not the right time. I'm not ready yet." 3 years passed, and the coffee shop never came to life except in late-night conversations filled with quiet regret. One day, I shared with him a quote from Marcus Aurelius, philosopher king who lived through war, plague, and betrayal, yet still kept clarity and calm within. He once wrote to himself, "Do not let the perfect be the enemy of action. Every moment you hesitate is a piece of life slipping away." I don't know what that sentence stirred in him, but a few weeks later, he began just small steps, revisiting the old house he once considered renting, buying second-hand wooden tables, and serving the first cups of coffee. No promotion, no perfection, just a handwritten menu. but it was real. It had begun, and for the first time, I saw him glow brighter than any of the plans he'd ever drafted. He had become like a stoic, not striving for perfection, but daring to move forward, even with uncertainty, even when it wasn't enough. Still, he acted with integrity and commitment, because action is the true foundation of growth. I used to be like him too, delaying countless times, thinking I wasn't good enough. I once passed on a speaking opportunity because I didn't feel confident enough. I left an article unpublished just because it didn't feel perfect. I didn't start working out because what good is 5 minutes? But eventually, I learned something. An imperfect action is still worth 100 times more than a dream that stands still, and one small step repeated long enough can carve an entire path. What about you? Will you take one step toward that road you've been quietly holding in your heart? I'm not assigning you homework, just offering a reminder. You don't need to finish the book. Just write a paragraph. You don't need a full 1-hour workout. Just warm up for 5 minutes. You don't need to fix your entire life. Just fix one thing today. When you hold back because you feel you're not ready, remember this: you are enough to begin something. Perfection isn't a requirement for action. It is the result of 1,000 imperfect steps, repeated with persistence. So write down one thing you've been postponing, just one, and name the first step so small you'd have no excuse not to do it. Maybe it's reopening an email, making a call, walking for 10 minutes, or simply writing a rough draft. You don't have to change the whole world. Just change 15 minutes of your day, because I don't need to get everything right. I just need to start one thing right. A mountain isn't climbed in a grand leap. It's climbed with awkward, shaky first steps. 4. I control my response. No one can force me to be angry. An insult can make you furious, or not. A disrespectful glance, a sarcastic remark thrown out in front of others, and in an instant you feel the heat rise. Your heart races, your body tenses, your mind scrambles. The urge to defend yourself kicks in like instinct. But some people, they don't react that way. They pause. Not because they're weak, but because they know. Strength doesn't lie in the right to react, but in the right to choose how to react. I remember an interview with Will Smith on 60 Minutes. The host deliberately brought up painful memories from his childhood violence. His father, the wounds he had once spoken about. The tension was thick. Cameras zoomed in on his face. Everyone waited for a reaction, a rebuttal, maybe a breakdown, but Will Smith remained quiet. He didn't deflect, didn't lash out. He lifted his head, took a breath, and said slowly, "I can't control what others say, but I can control how I allow it to affect me." He didn't have to shout to claim the moral high ground. He didn't need to force composure to protect his image. He simply stayed with himself, and that made the whole room fall silent in respect. The philosopher Epictetus once said, "No one can harm you unless you allow them to." A statement that sounds simple, but it's the foundation of the entire Stoic worldview. Because in a world full of chaos, you can't control what others will say, do, or misunderstand about you. But you can always control the one thing that truly belongs to you, your response. I used to get angry over criticism. Sometimes it was just a mean comment online, but it ruined my entire afternoon. I felt attacked. I felt like I had to respond, to set the record straight. But then I realized, the more I reacted, the more I handed over control of my mood to someone else. I was letting their emotions become my emotions. And just like that, I lost control, willingly. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The space between stimulus and response, that's where you find your freedom." Meaning, you don't have to react right away. You can create a pausier breath, a step back, a silence long enough to choose again. Next time someone tries to provoke, you don't rush to reply. Try taking a deep breath. 3 slow counts. Feel your heartbeat. Feel the heat in your chest. And then respond with calm, not reflex. You might not win the argument, but you'll have done something most people never learn to do. You stayed true to yourself. I don't react, I choose how to respond. 5. I live fully in the present. The past no longer holds power over me. Some memories no longer appear in clear shape, yet they're strong enough to pull you back into an old version of yourself, where you once failed, once regretted, once lost, something you can never undo. And the sad part is, the longer we live with that memory, the more we start to believe we no longer deserve to move forward. I once met a man who had served in the US military. He was a Marine, deployed to Iraq during its most brutal years. When he returned, he carried more than a wound in his leg. He carried an invisible scar from a moment's hesitation that cost his closest friend his life right before his eyes. No one blamed him, but he never forgave himself. For years, he lived quietly, shutting down every opportunity and close connection because of a rusted belief that he was the one who caused that death. The past became a sentence, and he was his own harshest judge. Though he had left the battlefield, he never truly came home. I shared with him something Stoicism reminds us. You cannot change the past, but you can fully live today, because the only thing we truly own is this moment. The past does not define you. It's just a chapter in the book, not the cover. You can write a new chapter, one where you don't try to erase the mistake, but face it with responsibility and choose to live differently, little by little. I saw him begin writing letters to his family, sending thanks to fellow soldiers who were still alive, and joining a veteran support project, not to seek redemption, but to remind himself, today is still a chance to do what's right. And each small act like that was how he reclaimed his freedom from the hands of the past. Try writing down one thing you can do today, even the smallest thing, to begin healing something you still feel guilty about. Maybe it's a message of apology, a kind deed, or simply forgiving yourself. The past is a lesson, not a life sentence. I am not defined by what has been. I am creating what will be. If there's something in your past that still haunts you, don't run from it. Do one small thing to reclaim your power today. And if this video touched something in you, share it with someone else who might still be trapped in their memories too. Stoic App will always be here, walking with you on the path to mastering yourself with calm, not noise. 6. I don't need anyone's approval. I just need to live true to myself. I have a close friend who used to work at a major tech company in San Francisco. 6-figure salary, luxurious office, colleagues who admired him. But every morning, he woke up feeling like he was wearing a mask. In meetings, he smiled, nodded, pitched ideas. But inside, he felt like he was walking further and further away from what mattered most. He once dreamed of becoming a teacher, of inspiring others, helping them find direction the way someone once helped him. But every time that thought surfaced, it was quickly drowned out by voices in his head. What will people think? Quitting a perfect job to go teach? Who do you think you are? Eventually, after one exhausting 3-hour meeting where no one truly listened to each other, he stood up and never went back. I asked him, "Weren't you scared?" He replied, "Of course I was." But continuing to live that way was even scarier. There are so many people living as if the world were a stage, always trying to perform the right role to earn applause. But Stoicism teaches us the opposite. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, Don't live as if the world is watching you. Live as if you're watching yourself. A Stoic doesn't seek applause. A Stoic doesn't need the spotlight to see their worth. They only need the mirror of their conscience and the courage to not look away when facing it. Look at those who truly lived the Stoic way. Marcus Aurelius. At one point, the most powerful man on earth did not write meditations to be praised. He wrote it in silence, for himself, in cold military tents, amid war and plague, to remind himself to live with kindness even when no one was watching. Epictetus, a slave, had his leg broken by his master, lived in poverty his whole life, yet he was free in mind, and taught thousands of wealthy men that dignity lies not in status, but in how we live when no one is looking. Ryan Holiday, modern author, walked away from the glamour of media, left a multi-million-dollar marketing role to live simply in Texas, waking at 5 a.m. each day to care for his family, write books, and tend his garden. Because to him, success isn't measured by recognition, but by living truthfully every single day. They had nothing to prove to the world, and they didn't need to be understood. Because when you live in line with what you know is right, peace of mind is the reward. But if you live out of alignment, then even the world's applause won't help you sleep at night. There was a time when I tried to please everyone, saying the right things, avoiding disappointment, and sacrificing what I believed was right just to keep the peace. But in the end, the biggest betrayal wasn't toward anyone else, it was toward myself, and the price was my inner peace. You don't need to shout to prove you're right. Sometimes, quietly living your values, that's the loudest act of all. Sit down and write out one thing you've been compromising just to be liked. One value you once held sacred but has slowly been worn away. And then, step by step, begin to reclaim it. No one else can live for you, so why live to please someone else? Truth doesn't need applause. Real value doesn't need a spotlight. 7. I deserve good things. I once knew a man who was intelligent, grounded, and incredibly hardworking. He wasn't the kind to show off, but anyone who met him could sense his quiet strength and kindness. And yet, for years, he avoided love. He didn't allow himself to enter deep relationships. He held back from opportunities he absolutely deserved. Every time I asked, why, he would just smile and shake his head. I guess this is all I deserve. That answer haunted me for a long time. Not because it was weak, but because I had once thought the same, just in a different way. I once turned down a major collaboration offer just because a voice inside told me, "You're not good enough yet." I once pulled back when praised, shrank when success came close, and felt uneasy whenever someone truly cared about me, as if there was always a voice whispering, "Careful, this might be too good to be real." Stoicism doesn't teach us to chase everything, but it does teach us this. You don't need to be perfect to be worthy. You just need to live with virtue. And virtue here isn't a title. It's how you live each day when no one's watching. Honesty, kindness, keeping your word to yourself, and not betraying what you believe is right. When you live that way, you don't need to ask permission to be happy. The feeling of not being worthy is not the truth. It's a scar left by old pain. It's someone's judgment that stuck with you. It's the shadow of a past you haven't forgiven yourself for. It's the feeling of being left out, compared, made to believe that you must deserve love to receive it. But you are not those old definitions. And you don't need to keep punishing yourself by turning away good things just because someone once failed to see your worth. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Nothing is worth more than a soul that has lived rightly." So if you're living rightly, why not let yourself receive? I'm not asking you to demand anything from anyone. I'm just inviting you to try every morning, to stand in front of a mirror and say, "I allow myself to receive good things." Say it with a bit of doubt if you have to. Say it even if your heart is still afraid. But say it, because that's how you begin rebuilding a belief that you don't need anyone to approve you to be loved. Then, each day, act as if you believe it's true. Give yourself time. Accept a compliment instead of dismissing it. Receive affection without feeling you have to give back to earn it. And when someone treats you like you matter, don't step away. Look them in the eye, smile, and say, "Thank you." You don't need permission to be happy, because real happiness isn't a prize for the perfectists, a right of those who live truthfully every day with quiet integrity and self-respect. And if that's how you've been living, then you already deserve it. 8. I'm grateful there's someone beside me. A colleague once told me, "I always thought Dad would live forever, until he didn't." At the time, he was cleaning out his father's old room. The scent of aftershave still lingered, leather shoes left unwiped, and an old wristwatch that had stopped ticking. He said, for the past few years, every time they talked, his dad would ask, "When are you coming to visit?" And he'd always reply, "Sorry, work's busy, maybe next week." But that next week never came. We often forget that the people we love won't be here forever. They're living alongside us, but they could leave at any moment without notice. And when that happens, what we regret most isn't what we did, but what we never got to do. A hug, a thank you, an hour of deep listening, a look held without avoidance. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You could lose anyone at any moment. Be grateful while they're still here." That's not a warning, it's a wake-up call. Because a relationship doesn't die in one moment. It dies slowly in every unnecessary silence, every message never sent, every moment of connection taken for granted. We lose those we love, not because they leave, but because we stopped seeing them as if they could be gone tomorrow. Stoicism doesn't urge you to cling to those around you, but it does invite you to live awake to recognize that love, friendship, family are all temporary gifts. And those gifts only truly exist when we're grateful for them. Gratitude isn't a romantic feeling, it's an action. It's when you lift your head from your busy schedule, look at the person still patiently there, and say, "Thank you for not leaving." I once went through a period where I thought no one could possibly pull me out. It was the year the economic crisis hit. The company I had been with for nearly a decade had to cut staff and, despite being a senior member, I was on the list. At the same time, my mother was rushed to the hospital. The doctors said we had to prepare a significant sum for surgery. I felt like I was falling into a hole, jobless, financially pressured, and powerless to help the woman who had given her whole life to care for me. I remember that night, after leaving the hospital, I sat on the sidewalk numb. I didn't cry. I wasn't angry. I just felt empty. And then, an old friend, someone I hadn't seen in nearly 10 years, suddenly pulled over. He didn't say anything profound, just looked at me for a moment and said, "I brought 2 coffees. Got an extra one by accident. Want to sit for a bit?" We sat there for nearly an hour. We didn't talk about life. He didn't try to fix anything. But the way he sat beside me quietly, without pity or judgment, felt like someone gently reaching out a hand, just as I was drifting in the ocean with nothing left to hold on to. He didn't solve the problem, but he reminded me I wasn't alone. We're not truly alone. We've just gone silent in front of love. We're not short on people who care. We've just forgotten how to express it. We haven't been abandoned. We just haven't turned around to look and say, "I'm lucky you're still here. Today, send a message." It doesn't need to be poetic, just sincere. A thank you to a friend, a check-in with a family member, an old apology long overdue, not to be more loved, but to live more honestly with the love you already have. If you're thinking of someone needn't, just think. Message them right now. Just one line. I'm grateful you're in my life. It doesn't have to be perfect timing. It just has to be real. Because love, if never spoken, will never be enough. I'm not alone because I still carry love that hasn't yet been said. 9. I will stay focused and committed to what I chose. I once had a friend who was incredibly smart and talented, but every few months he would start something new: writing, investing, design, programming, always full of excitement at the beginning, and then silently disappear halfway through. Every time we caught up, he would say, "Everyone else seems to be moving so fast, and I'm just stuck, wandering." But that wandering wasn't because he chose the wrong path, it was because he never stayed on any path long enough to finish it. I understand that feeling, because I used to be the same. There was a project I was deeply passionate about. Months of preparation, time, effort, and belief poured into it. But after a while, I saw others doing similar things and succeeding faster. I began to doubt myself. Maybe I picked the wrong path. So I changed direction. But when I started again, the cycle repeated. And every time I gave up, I didn't just lose time, I lost a little more trust in myself. Because the issue wasn't the choice itself, it was my lack of commitment to it. I'm not saying you have to stick with every decision you make. Sometimes we do need to adjust. But many times, what makes us stop isn't the wrong path, it's the moment we start comparing. We see others moving faster, shining brighter, gaining more attention, and we forget why we began in the first place. We forget that every path has its slow parts, rough patches, and moments so lonely they feel unbearable. But that's part of the journey, not a reason to quit. In Stoicism, there's a sharp but simple reminder from Marcus Aurelius. Don't look around too much. Look straight at where you chose to go. When you keep glancing left and right, you'll always see someone faster, more successful, more visible. But the only comparison that matters is whether today you are still being honest with the path you committed to yesterday. Success doesn't require 100 right directions. Just own a right enough and long enough. I think of Kobe Bryant, often seen as the embodiment of discipline. Few remember that when he first joined the NBA, Kobe was the youngest player in history to miss all 3 game-winning shots in a playoff match. He was criticized, doubted, called too young. But instead of avoiding it or making excuses, Kobe chose to return to the game earlier, longer, more consistently than anyone else. At 4 a.m., he was already on the court, repeating the same shots, not to prove himself to the world, but to keep a promise to himself. And that quiet commitment is what made him a legend, not just in sports, but in any journey that demands iron will and loyalty to one's goal. Stoic philosophy never teaches us to outrun others. It simply reminds us, every day, be steady enough not to change course every time it gets hard. Because the fastest person isn't always the one who arrives, but the one who doesn't stop always will. If you're pursuing something, career, a habit, a value, and you're starting to feel lost because your progress is slow, sit down and write out the reason you started. Maybe you haven't seen results yet, no one's recognized you, and you haven't reached what you're aiming for. But if that reason still feels true, then stay, keep going. Take one more step, even if it's small. You don't need to win someone else's race. You just need to be honest with your own path and committed enough not to quit in the middle of the most important stretch. 10. I don't need to see the whole path. I just need to take one right step today. I once spoke with a friend in his early 30s, smart, healthy, with a stable job. But every time we met, he'd say the same thing. I don't know what I'm living for anymore. He had no great passion, no clear goal, and nothing that really called his name. He wasn't depressed, but he always felt like he was floating, not wrong but not right, not unhappy but not truly alive either. I asked him, "So what does a typical day look like for you?" He said, "Just normal. Wake up, go to work, eat, chat with friends." I looked at him and gently said, "Then you're already living. You just haven't realized that you're creating your life with every day that passes." We often think life will become clear in one grand moment of awakening, a sudden insight, a major turning point, something loud and dramatic that reveals it all. But for most of us, that moment never comes. Not because life has no meaning, but because meaning isn't something we find, it's something we create. And it's created not in some extraordinary day, but in the small things we choose to do today. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Don't let the future disturb you. You'll arrive there if you do what needs to be done today." No one knows where they're going, but everyone knows they can take a right step right now. You don't need to define your final goal. Just do one small thing aligned with your values, your conscience, your sense of what's good and right. I once went through a phase where I thought I needed a big vision to make life worth living. I needed to do something grand, change the world, achieve something remarkable, but that mindset kept making me feel not enough. I chased inspiration. I waited for worthy goals. I looked for meaning in the future and lost the ability to live fully today. Then I tried something very small. Each morning, I woke up 15 minutes earlier, made my bed neatly, and wrote one line in a journal. Nothing huge, but after 1 week, my mind felt a little clearer. After a month, I started reading again. After 3 months, I picked up an old project I'd abandoned. I still didn't know exactly where I was going, but I knew I was moving and no longer frozen in confusion. Stoicism doesn't promise you a brilliant future. It simply reminds you of this. You don't need to see the entire road, you just need to take one right step today. And if today you live rightly, then tomorrow you will be closer to a meaningful life without needing to have it all figured out from the start. If you're feeling lost right now, try doing something simple. Write down one small action you can take today to live more truthfully. Maybe it's calling your mother. Maybe it's saying no to something you don't want to do. Maybe it's picking up the book you once left unfinished. You don't need to change the world. You just need to live more kindly with this day. I don't need to know the destination, only that today I'm walking in the right direction. Maybe you still don't know where your life is heading. Maybe you're caught between choices, crossroads, and voices in your mind. But sometimes what you need most isn't a map that lays out every direction, but just one solid step true to the values you quietly believe in. One kind action, one honest decision, one unspoken thank you, one moment you choose not to turn back. Just that can be enough to make tomorrow different from today. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Do what's right, the rest will follow." That sentence doesn't ask you to know what's ahead. It doesn't expect you to be brilliant, fearless, or perfect. It simply reminds you, there's always one thing within your grasp. Even when the world outside is chaos show, you choose to live today. If at any moment in this video, something brought you back to what you once believed, if one sentence made you pause for a few seconds and look deeper into yourself, then don't keep that to yourself. Share this video with someone you believe might need a reminder that they are worthy. And if you want to keep walking the path of living true to yourself, of being fully present in each day, let Stoic App walk with you, with stillness, without noise.